On June 28, 2024, the United States Supreme Court voted 6-3 and handed every city in this country a new set of tools. The case came out of Grants Pass, Oregon, population 38,000. The fine for sleeping on public property with a blanket, $295, first offense. The morning that ruling dropped, city attorneys across the country started updating their ordinances. Enforcement sweeps intensified from Los Angeles to Memphis to Albuquerque. On any given night right now, somewhere between 80,000 and 120,000 people in this country are sleeping in their vehicles. That number is growing faster than any other category in the federal homeless count. This video is for every one of those people. And it is for anyone who has 3 missed paychecks from needing to know this. Stay with me. If you have ever needed to sleep somewhere without being seen, subscribe and stay close. That is what we do here. I spent more winters than I will admit sleeping in a vehicle. More years outside in between than I talk about. I know what it smells like when the only roof you have is a headliner and the windows start fogging before you even close your eyes. The people out there sleeping in their vehicles right now are not weak. They are engineers. They are solving hard problems with nothing, in the dark, every single night. I am not here to make you feel sorry for them. I am here to share what works. The first thing people say every time is go to a shelter. And I'm not going to pretend shelters do not exist. They do. They help people. If you are in immediate danger this summer, if the heat is winning, walk into an air-conditioned public library or find a cooling center and stay there until you can think straight. I mean that without reservation. But here's what the shelter math actually looks like out there. On the night of the 2023 federal homeless count, there were roughly 415,000 shelter beds available across the entire country against 653,000 people experiencing homelessness. That is a structural shortage before you even look at the rules. 6 p.m. check-in curfew, mandatory out the door by 6 in the morning, no guarantee the same bed is yours tomorrow, no pets, no couples housed together in most mixed facilities, no storage for your tools, your documents, the work clothes you need for Monday morning. A study out of the University of California, San Francisco, found that 78% of people who were offered a shelter bed and turned it down did so for reasons that were entirely rational. Safety concerns, rules that separated them from their partner or their animal, stolen belongings, the loss of any privacy or autonomy whatsoever. The vehicle locks. It moves. For many people, it is the last stable thing standing between them and something much worse. A car can take you to a job interview. A shelter bed cannot. The other thing people say is Walmart. And that used to be true. For years, Walmart tolerated overnight parking as an unofficial national policy. Around 2019 and 2020, that reversed at the corporate level. As of today, overnight parking permission is at individual store manager discretion. Dozens of locations have explicit no overnight signage posted. You might get lucky. You might get a knock on the glass at midnight. Cracker Barrel explicitly tolerates RVs at most locations. Their corporate policy says so. Pilot, Flying J, Love's, those truck stop travel plazas are still reliable because they make money off overnight traffic. But as a plan, a blanket default, the Walmart answer is no longer a plan. Here's the thing almost nobody explains, and it is the hinge that everything in this video turns on. The anti-vehicle dwelling ordinances that have spread into cities across more than 40 states, the ones that got turbocharged the morning after the Grants Pass ruling, they are almost never triggered by a car being parked on a street. They are triggered by signals, evidence of habitation. That is the actual legal language in ordinance after ordinance. Los Angeles Municipal Code, Section 85.02 defines unlawful vehicle habitation as using a vehicle as living quarters. The operative word is using, and the way an officer establishes that in the field is by observing visible evidence. Bedding through the window, cooking equipment, multiple people exiting at once, interior light on at 2 in the morning, condensation blooming across the glass. Without those signals, a car parked legally on a public street is just a car. The law has nothing to grab. A patrol car can drive past it 100 times, nothing happens. City attorneys in Los Angeles have acknowledged that blanket enforcement against every parked vehicle at night would be legally unsustainable. The ordinances need probable cause. Probable cause needs evidence. Evidence needs signals. Think of it this way. A dark, silent van sitting on a residential street at 11 at night is invisible to the law. That same van with the interior light glowing, the curtains shifting, and condensation on every window at 1 in the morning is a 911 call waiting to happen. The difference between those two vans is $18 of reflective foil and arriving after the neighbors go to bed. That is the pattern. Every method in this video works by the same logic. You are not breaking the law. You are removing the conditions the law needs to operate. Keep that in your head, because I'm going to come back to it. Start with the simplest layer, stealth. The vehicle that does not get noticed is the vehicle that does not look lived in. I have cut window covers from a roll of Reflectix double bubble foil insulation with a pocket knife in a parking lot before the summer sun came up, and I will tell you exactly what I learned. The silver faces out. That does two things simultaneously. At night, it kills any interior light before it ever reaches the glass, so from the street there is nothing to see. In the daytime, which is where we live right now in June, it bounces solar heat back before it gets inside. A bare window in direct summer sun will push the interior of that vehicle to 130 degrees Fahrenheit, 54 Celsius, in under 20 minutes with the windows up. A reflective cover on that same window reduces the interior heat gain by 15 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit. That is not nothing. That is the line between uncomfortable and dangerous. A roll of Reflectix runs $18 to $22 at Home Depot or Walmart. You cut it to the shape of each window, press fit, and it holds itself with no adhesive needed. If you do not want the silver exterior look, black fleece fabric cut to size and held with magnetic clips, about $4 on Amazon, blocks interior light at night without advertising that somebody did a careful, deliberate job of fitting the windows. Enforcement officers who see a professionally fitted foil cover know what they are looking at. Black fabric reads as a sunshade. Simple is better when simple is invisible. Now the vehicle itself. A white or silver cargo van, a Transit, a ProMaster, a Sprinter, already reads as a work vehicle. That reading matters more than most people realize. Enforcement in cities like Los Angeles and Seattle consistently documents that RVs and large campers are the primary enforcement targets and the primary source of neighborhood complaints. A white van parked on a commercial street does not read as a home. It reads as a plumber running calls or a weekend courier who has not moved yet. You have not tricked anyone. You have just chosen a vehicle that disappears into the context around it. The last stealth layer is time discipline. Arrive after 10 at night, leave before 7 in the morning. That window looks like someone who got off a late shift and left early. No neighbor sees you pull in. No neighbor sees you leave. In residential areas, enforcement is almost entirely complaint-driven. No complaint, no action. This is not a theory. It is how the ordinances actually function. Move every 72 hours. Most municipal no parking and abandoned vehicle ordinances trigger after 72 hours in the same location. Some cities run a 24 or 48-hour clock, so look it up locally, but 72 hours is the most common threshold. Moving before that clock expires is legal and effective and costs nothing but the gas to drive around the block to the next street. There are apps built around exactly this. iOverlander is free and crowdsourced, real users leaving GPS pins on spots that work and spots that got burned. Freecampsites.net pulls from a wider net. The Diart adds a filter layer. These are real, active communities. People are working this system tonight. That is the first layer. Stealth keeps you invisible on the street you are already on. The second layer gives you somewhere else to be entirely. Private property is a different legal universe from public property. Nearly every municipal ordinance restricting vehicle habitation applies specifically to public property, streets, parks, public parking lots. It says so in the text. Private property with the explicit permission of the property owner is legally clean. A note, a handshake, a verbal agreement with a church, a business, a neighbor grants cover that no enforcement action can touch. Church-safe parking programs are real and documented across the country. California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Texas, the Northeast. Individual congregations that open their parking lots to vehicle dwellers, typically 1 to 3 nights per week per vehicle, with basic conduct rules and no cost to the participants. One name you can look up right now: New Beginnings Counseling Center in Santa Barbara, California. Founded in 2004 by Deborah Barrios. The first large-scale documented safe parking program in the United States. Approximately 50 vehicles per night. It has been running for over 20 years. The New York Times covered it. NPR covered it. Hundreds of people who started in a car have been housed through that program. The model works. The reason there are 100 similar programs across the country instead of 1,000 is not logistics. It is political will. Every safe parking site has to be somewhere, and the neighborhood where it would go does not want it there. That is the real barrier, and it is a choice, not a law. Safe Parking LA, run by PATH, People Assisting the Homeless, operates 8 or more fixed sites as of the last public count, funded in part by LA County, with case management services attached. Real programs, real addresses, reachable through 201 LA. Over 100 documented church-based and nonprofit safe parking programs exist across the country as of 2025. If there is one in the city you are in, that is the cleanest legal option on this entire list. One more piece of this layer worth knowing. In 2021, Oregon passed House Bill 3115, signed into law. It requires Oregon cities and counties with populations above 2,500 to allow people to sleep in vehicles on public property in at least one designated area. That makes Oregon the only state in the country with an affirmative legal right to vehicle sleep on public property. Oregon went the other direction entirely. That is not a small thing. It proves that where vehicle dwellers can legally be is a political decision, not an inevitable outcome. Every city that bans it chose to ban it. Every city that allows it chose to allow it. Oregon chose to allow it by law. Notice what all of this has in common. Every method so far works by stripping away the signal that enforcement needs to operate. No visible bedding, no interior light, no extended presence on a single public street, no public property at all. Remove the signal and the law has no target. Your grandparents had a word for this. They called it keeping a low profile. The street called it staying invisible. The mechanism is the same. Rest areas. Underused and underrated. 20 states explicitly allow overnight rest area stays with no effective time limit or limits long enough to sleep and leave without being moved. Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, most of the Mountain West. Rest areas along Interstate 80, Interstate 90, Interstate 15. The Federal Highway Administration does not set a national overnight limit. It is state-controlled, and in those states, it is free and legal. For states that post 3 to 8 hour limits, enforcement is sparse, especially in rural areas. The rural rest areas along the Mountain West interstates run largely unrestricted in practice. If the sign says nothing, it usually means nothing is coming. Truck stops are a different calculation. Pilot, Flying J, Loves, TA, Petro. Private commercial property that profits from overnight stays. Long-haul drivers sleep in these lots as part of their legal work cycle, and the truck stop makes money off the fuel, the food, and the showers. A vehicle dweller who fills the tank and buys a coffee is a customer. Showers at Pilot and Flying J are running $13 to $17 right now, depending on location. If you are out there long-term, that math adds up fast. The known solution, the one the vehicle-dwelling community worked out long before I got here, is a Planet Fitness membership. $10 a month. 2,400 locations across the country. Open early, close late, most of them around the clock. A $120 a year hygiene solution for a $10 a month membership. Rich folks call that a life hack. The street just calls it Tuesday. Now I need to tell you something about why this has gotten harder, not easier, over the past 20 years. The National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty surveyed 187 cities in 2019 and found that anti-vehicle dwelling ordinances had increased 213% since 2006. 213% in 13 years. That is not drift. That is a coordinated direction. City council after city council, in response to neighborhood complaints from property owners about what the vehicle parked on their street is doing to their property values and their neighborhood character. That is documented in council hearing records in Los Angeles, in Seattle, in San Jose, in Denver, in Honolulu. It is not a conspiracy. It is standard municipal politics. Homeowners vote in local elections. People who live in their vehicles generally cannot, because in most states, you need a fixed address to register. The people the council hears from want the vehicle gone, so the council moves it. Not to housing, just somewhere else. To the next street, the next city, the next county. Out of sight. And there is money in the moving. Los Angeles collected approximately $160 million in parking citations in a single fiscal year. The towing and impound industry in this country runs about $7 billion a year. A tow costs $200 to $500. Impound storage is $50 to $100 per day. If you cannot pay that fast, you lose the vehicle. And losing the vehicle, the home, the transportation to work, the last stable thing you own, is documented as one of the primary pathways from vehicle homelessness into literal, unsheltered homelessness. The enforcement mechanism makes the underlying problem worse. The people who profit from that mechanism have no incentive for it to improve. The Urban Institute found that cities spend $30,000 to $50,000 per person per year on enforcement and emergency services for chronically homeless individuals. In many markets, that is more money than stable housing would cost. The system that is keeping people on the street is more expensive than the system that would get them off it. That is not a conspiracy. It is a quiet agreement among everyone who profits from the status quo that the status quo is acceptable. It is not acceptable. But knowing exactly what it is helps you stop being surprised by it and start working around it. Now I need to drop the register for a minute because we are talking about summer, and summer kills. A vehicle parked in direct sun with the windows up will reach 130 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit inside. That is 54 to 77 Celsius. It reaches that temperature in 15 to 30 minutes on a clear June day. Heat stroke begins when your core body temperature hits 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 Celsius. At 107 degrees Fahrenheit, 41.7 Celsius, organ failure becomes possible without immediate intervention. These are not edge cases. These are documented, measurable thresholds, and they are reachable inside a parked vehicle in June across most of the lower 48 states. I am not going to be the man who gets you hurt to win a click. Shade first, everything else second. A vehicle in full shade runs 25 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than the same vehicle sitting in direct sun. That delta costs you nothing. Park under a tree, under an overpass, on the north side of a building where the shadow falls. Shade is the first move, always before anything else. Windows cracked 1 to 2 inches at the top on opposite sides. Warm air rises and escapes from the top gap while cooler air is drawn in at the bottom. A 12-volt fan, $15 to $25, running off a small power bank or the auxiliary battery, moves that air across your face all night. I clip mine to the coat hook above the back door so it blows straight across where I sleep. That combination, shade, cracked windows, fan, is survivable. A sealed vehicle with nothing moving is not. If you ever run the engine with the windows up or nearly up, you need a carbon monoxide detector inside that vehicle. The Kitty CO400 is about $25 at Walmart. The first alert, CO400, runs about $22. Battery-powered, portable, the size of a large smoke detector. CO is colorless and odorless. The symptoms move from headache to nausea to confusion to unconsciousness before most people recognize what is happening. It kills people in vehicles every year, and most of them never knew they were in danger. $22. That is not optional. Know where the cooling centers are before the heat peaks. Most major cities open them when ambient temperature hits 95 to 100 degrees. Public libraries are air-conditioned and open to everyone. An emergency room will not turn away someone in heat distress. These resources exist. Knowing them in advance is different from scrambling for them at midnight when you cannot think straight. Now here is what I see pushed around online that will hurt you. Running the engine for cooling with the windows cracked. This gets presented as a safe middle ground. It is not. Carbon monoxide from the exhaust accumulates in the passenger compartment, even with windows partially open, especially in still air, especially if there is any rust or deterioration in the exhaust system. There is no cracked window exemption from CO poisoning. The people who have died this way died believing the crack was enough. Use a fan instead. A fan draws 12 volts and carries zero combustion risk. That is the move. The second one is assuming a public street means no problem. Most residential streets allow parking, and that part is true. But permit-only zones in dense urban areas will cost you $65 to $125 for parking without a residential sticker. Street sweeping violations run another $70 to $85 if you are in the wrong block on the wrong morning. And in residential neighborhoods, neighbor calls to the non-emergency line generate welfare checks. A welfare check is not illegal, but it burns the spot. The officer now knows that vehicle. The neighbor is now watching for it. You will not get 2 quiet nights in a row there. The magnetic work vehicle sign theory is out there too. The idea that generic HVAC or plumbing lettering on a van makes it read as a trade vehicle and draws less enforcement attention. That is a plausible idea, and people in the van-dwelling community report trying it. But there is no controlled data on whether it actually reduces attention in any consistent way. Mention it as something people experiment with, not as a system you stake a night on. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You are thinking, what do I actually say if a patrol car pulls up and the officer comes to the window? You stay calm. You know your rights. In most circumstances, you can decline consent to a search. You can comply with a lawful order without volunteering information. You can ask for the officer's name and badge number. The ACLU publishes a Know Your Rights Guide specifically for people experiencing homelessness. It is free, accurate, and covers exactly this interaction. Read it before you need it, not after. You are also thinking, this is all just moving the problem around. And yes, every method in this video is an individual solution to a structural problem. The structure is broken in ways that one person in one vehicle cannot fix. But you cannot work on the bigger problem from inside a parked car with the lights off and no plan. You survive first, you get stable, you get the ground under you. Then you work on the bigger thing. That is the sequence, not the other way around. Now, here is what I saved for the end. The one that changes the math entirely. 245 million acres of land in the United States where sleeping in your vehicle tonight is completely legal, requires no permit, costs nothing, and no municipal ordinance has any jurisdiction over you whatsoever. It has been this way since 1976. Most people living in their vehicles have never been told this. The Bureau of Land Management administers 245 million acres of federal public land, concentrated in 11 western states: Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, California, and Alaska. Dispersed camping, meaning camping outside of a developed fee-based campground, is legal and free on most of that land under federal regulation, 43 CFR Section 8364.1, and the Federal Land Policy and Management Act of 1976. No reservation, no fee. 14 days in one location, then you move at least 25 miles, and you can return to the same general area after 28 days. That is the rule. That is the whole rule. The Grants Pass ruling, the ruling that opened the door for cities across the country to intensify enforcement, applies to municipal ordinances on public property within municipal jurisdiction. Federal land is governed by federal regulations. A city parking ordinance, a county anti-habitation code, a local camping ban, none of them apply. The trigger that every stealth layer in this video is designed to remove does not exist on BLM land because there is no local law to trigger in the first place. The United States Forest Service manages an additional 193 million acres under similar dispersed camping rules. Some national forests require a free permit. Most do not. Between the two agencies, you are looking at over 400 million acres of federal land where the math is different. Every winter, up to 12,000 vehicles park legally on BLM land outside Quartzsite, Arizona, at the La Posa long-term visitor area. $40 for a 2-week permit, $180 for the full season, September through April. 12,000 vehicles at peak. It is the largest legal vehicle dwelling community in the United States, and nobody built it, nobody funded it, nobody organized it. People found the law that already existed, and they showed up. That community has operated for over 40 years. Now the summer piece, because June is what we are in. BLM land at low elevation in the desert Southwest is hot. The desert floor outside Phoenix pushes 105 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit during the day in June. But elevation changes everything. BLM land above 4,000 feet runs 15 to 25 degrees cooler than the valley floor. Above 5,000 feet, June nights drop into the 60s. There are ranges of BLM land in Colorado, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, and eastern California. Above 5,000 feet where a June night is 62 degrees and quiet, and the stars are sharp, and there is not a single ordinance in any direction for miles. That is free. That is legal. And on 245 million acres of federal land, there is no local ordinance, no municipal code, no enforcement trigger. That is not a workaround. That is just geography. iOverlander has the GPS pins. FreeCampsites.net aggregates it. The BLM publishes its own maps and GeoPDF files for free on its website. The information is public. The system does not hide this from you. Nobody just tells vehicle dwellers it is there. So here's what I would do before the sun comes up tomorrow. Cover the windows tonight, silver side out. Get to wherever you are parking after 10 and be gone before 7. Move every 72 hours if you are on a public street. Look up whether a church-safe parking program runs in the city you are in. Pull up iOverlander and look at the BLM pins within a few hours of where you are right now. If any of those pins are above 4,000 feet, that is your summer answer. Get a CO detector before this week is done. $22. Do that part tonight. If you have spent a night in a vehicle, or if you know someone who has, tell me what actually worked, not the theory. The real move you made, in the real spot, at the real hour when you needed it. What did you do? I read every one of them, and I've been reading them for years. The people the world walks past learn things out there that never get written down anywhere else. Write it down here. Stay cool, stay sharp, and remember, the people the world walks past know things the rest of us forgot.